Welcome, welcome, welcome to Hermetically Speaking with your vessel, Toria, transmitting alchemy, mystic psychology, and channeled messaging for all of our days. Here, we explore the sacred, the shadow, and the infinite spiral path of awakening so you can remember who you are beneath the programming and rebuild yourself from the inside out. And as always, go back to episode 1 for my disclaimers on mystic psychology and the fact that I am not a medical professional, and everything I speak on is through experience and an energetic standpoint rooted in the ancient wisdom of Hermeticism. Therefore, if you are seeking medical advice of any kind, please consult a licensed professional. Welcome back to Hermetically Speaking with myself, your vessel, Toria, transmitting alchemy and mystic psychology for all of our days. Got some apple blossom and mugwort burning today, so just take it all in, take it all in. Windows are open, breeze is blowing, might hear some outside noise. So I'm just going to ask you to start this episode off with just taking a breath with me and just landing here, right now. This episode is a continuation of the journey that we've been on, moving through trauma responses, reclaiming our inner truth, and reconnecting with the many parts of ourselves we were never taught to see, hear, or understand. Today, we're exploring the mental and emotional landscapes, what can be called the inner orchestra, your symphony. You'll begin to hear how your thoughts are not just random, how your emotions aren't just moods. They are voices, frequencies, fragments of the self still carrying a message and awaiting to be returned home inside of you. We're going to move gently, no pressure to fix anything, just presence, awareness, and a deepening into your own sacred design. So settle in and let's begin. We're going to begin with something that isn't always obvious. Your mind isn't just one voice. It's not just your thoughts, air quotes. It's a collection of mental parts, fragments of your psyche that were formed through experience, conditioning, trauma, and survival. Many people go their whole lives without realizing this. And honestly, until recently, until we have become to know this ascension process on a broader scale, we definitely didn't, right? Like, these things are being unveiled to us because of the time that we are living in. We are in a miraculous time of humanity and life. And so many people go their whole lives without realizing this, right? Their inner commentary is it's just them. They believe it's just me, that gets normal, all these different thoughts and things like that. They don't question where these thoughts come from or when they started or what they're trying to do. So if you've ever felt stuck in indecision, if you've ever felt like you were saying one thing and doing another, if you've ever felt like there were conflicting voices inside of you, then yeah, there are. You're right. And asking questions, why are they conflicting? What are they doing? What's their goal? Why were they created, right? Like, we want to start asking these questions. And some of these mental parts formed in childhood, some during traumatic events. Some are inherited through ancestral memory or societal programming. And some are so deeply conditioned that they don't even feel separate. They feel like truth. We have literally attached ourselves to them and made them a part of our being. These mental parts speak in different ways. They may not have a literal voice, right? But no matter what their volume is, they still have a tone. They still have their own form of intensity, repetition, influence, their own frequency. And you might experience one voice that's critical, harsh, demanding, and another that's scared and doubting, and another that tries to push through everything with control and logic, right? We just touched on that on the last episode with the 4 F words. So I was lucky enough in my journey that these mental parts developed very distinct voices, very annoying, traumatic, loud, distorted from each other, very separate voices. Not just different tones, but different cadences and different personalities, some much louder than others, and some constantly narrating, while some only showing up when the unsafety was at its highest, or maybe even at its lowest, or when I had something trigger a memory. There was certain ones that come up with that. So mine were very, very loud. Mine were, I was in a 5-year psychosis. And so to say the least, they were loud. And here's the thing that I really, really want to make sure that I state very clearly. Every one of these mental voices is trying to protect you in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, we know survival mode is here to protect us, yet we don't give it enough credit or enough honoring for that. Like, we want to run out of it. We want to get rid of it. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to be stuck in survival mode. The goal is obviously to shed survival mode and live freely and independently and in your sovereignty. However, not stopping to give it the credit that it's due, that it's literally a transitional part of alchemy, is something that, maybe we could take a moment to do from time to time. And these parts, right, all of these parts were formed to shield you from pain, to avoid discomfort, to anticipate threats before they've ever arrived, and to make sure that you were never blindsided again from the things that previously harbored pain and trauma. But because these parts were formed in fear or survival, they don't understand who you really are, right? They're created out of societal programming, generational trauma, experiential trauma. They're created under the paradigm of what we're trying to break free from. So they have no clue about your sovereignty. They have no clue about your infinity. They have no clue about the creatrix that you are. That you're here to evolve your soul through experiences, and that you have the capacity to reshape reality instead of just react to it, right? Like, we come here forgetting that. And so our ego is set up just to react. We're lucky if we get to respond, right? Because responding is really kind of where we want to be. We want to choose our responses. It gives us that freedom. However, the reaction is from survival mode. So what do these mental parts do? They keep us stuck in the trauma responses we talked about in the last episode, and they try to reroute, they try to distract, analyze, and overthink your way to safety. And when those parts go unchecked, you end up in what I call the insanity loop. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that calls it that. A spiral of thought that keeps cycling, keeps forecasting, keeps spinning with different outcomes, right? Like, it just drives you insane. And if you've ever really taken the time to notice and you've tried to step away from an insanity loop, the insanity loop will literally loop on its own without you giving it any credence, because it is a pattern that you are used to, a way of thinking that you are used to, the ruminating, the timeline reviewing, all of those things. And it's also sometimes the obsession and the attachment that we stick to things, right? Like the fear of losing something. I know insanity loops, in my experience, were very, very big in toxic relationships, ones that I had trauma bonded into. I didn't know it at the time, obviously. I couldn't lose them. I couldn't leave them. Oh my gosh, what if this? What if that? And it went on about a lot of things, but looking back, it's all about things that I was trauma bonded to, had an over attachment or unhealthy attachment to. And they drove me insane, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? Like trying to stay in that relationship, trying to leave that relationship, trying to get back what I'd lost, things like that. And so you keep spinning, and not because it's helpful, because it's afraid to stop. It doesn't know that you are safe enough to stop trying to figure things out in a logical, obsessive, attached way. And for some, this loop shows up way more subtly in others than, it does in some others. It can be just a background hum. And for others, like myself, it becomes deafening. And I think it becomes deafening the more aware of it we are as well, because, the more sensitive we are to the spiritual knowledge we have, the more our etheric field becomes like sensitive to those symptoms, is what we'll call them. And it floods the body with emotion. It pulls you into old stories, old memories, scenarios that haven't happened, and they may never happen. However, your body literally lives them like they're happening when you're going through this insanity loop. So you're putting your body through a catastrophic amount of stress and reaction points, because your body doesn't, like, if you're thinking it, your body thinks you're experiencing it. And on some timeline, you probably are experiencing it. So therefore, your body is a multidimensional being as well. And it doesn't always dissect. I know that I currently do not have the ability to just separate my body from my thoughts. I'm not saying that in the future it's not possible to watch different timelines and see and, kind of detach from them. But, if I'm looking at different timelines, I'm feeling what those timelines are holding. And therefore, my liver, my gut, everything can feel it, right? And so that's something to consider. And here is something else to consider. Ego is probably one of the biggest things created because of the fact that we forget that we're creators. And in early awakening, and almost always in trauma, ego becomes the loudest mental part. Ego just kind of is everything in society right now, right? And it's the part that edges out your divine knowing. In the beginning, right? When you don't know that you're a divine being, your ego has no concept of how to construct around being a divine being. And instead, it's in this survival reactive mode that says, I'll handle this. I've got it. Trust no one but myself. And so one of the things early on in my recovery was ego stands for edging God out. And then I learned more and more as I walked this journey that it's really more that I'm not just edging God out, I'm edging myself out. I'm edging my higher self out. I'm edging my soul out. I'm edging out my infinite self. And the ego and the mental field as a whole doesn't yet know what your sovereign self knows. Again, hasn't been taught. That's what you're doing now. You're teaching it. You're reparenting it. You're reuniting it. So like the ego can kind of be, what was raised in the earlier stints of childhood and through adolescence and early adulthood, whatever, wherever you are in life at this point. It's developed. It's developed in survival because we forget who we really are. And I know that, I had to go through a reparenting phase myself where I had to reparent myself and kind of break the ways that my parents treated me. And, there were really great moments and there were not so great moments. There were different timelines that we experienced and different eras, I want to say eras, right? Like one decade of my life was It was the societal programming that everybody's kind of built in with, right? Like I had this great childhood, da 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 da. And then when I turned 10, my entire world fell apart. So I entered an alternate reality, completely separate from what I had known the first 10 years. And so I don't look at the first 10 years, I didn't look at the first 10 years of my life as, where I would have edged God out. But I definitely now have that better retrospect where I did because, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault, it's what we came here to do. We came here to forget. We came here to experience a lower density. We came here to experience these things. And transmute them, right? Like our whole life, my whole life is an alchemical journey. And the more that I understand that, the more that I grasp that, the more that I realize that everything that I experience, every thought that I have, everything I put in my body, every person that I meet is an alchemical compound to an equation that I am working on in one way, shape, or form, right? The entire world is my periodic table, including myself. And then I have a periodic table within me with my cells and my membranes and everything else. So we totally just trailed off topic with a really cool download. But yeah, so food for thought there. And now back to the regularly scheduled programming. So until these parts of us are healed, they're going to keep running their same programs, right? They'll magnetize situations that match the frequencies they carry. We'll repeat the same relationships. We'll repeat the same trauma. We'll repeat the same behaviors because every part of you is a magnet. And the mental parts, especially when they are full of fear, doubt, and conditioning, are powerful magnets for more of the same. So you may say, I want freedom. You may say, I want out of this 9 to 5. I want a healthy relationship. But if the programming running through your mind is heavier than your belief in that freedom, your field won't support the change, at least not yet. The more parts that fall in line with fear, the harder it is to unwind it. And so every time you entertain the old thought, follow the fear, or default to the loop, you reinforce the very pattern you're trying to dissolve. And also what this kind of comes back to, and you'll probably hear me say it a million times, is that we have a rule in recovery. It's like a rule of thumb, right? Like however many years you spent in active addiction is how many years of grace you need to give yourself to recover. And I have the same rule of thumb for trauma. However many years you spent in trauma, and whether it was active trauma or just the fact that you hadn't healed from the trauma, that's still kind of being in it because you're living in it. You're living in the patterns, right? You can be removed from it. Like I was removed from it with a lifetime protective order. But yet after the lifetime protective order, I still had stuff that I had to work through. And so, even as I was working through it, those years, my mind still thought that it was in trauma. My body still reacted like it was in trauma, and I had to work through that. So, I started using when I was 12 years old. And so I used I don't even remember what age I know what year I got clean. I got clean in 2018. That's my clean date. I got clean from drugs and cigarettes in 2017, and I gave up alcohol in 2018. I don't remember how old I was. I was 31, probably, because the psychosis set in right before my Saturn return, like 27, 28. So anyways, yeah, that's here nor there really, I guess. But I was just trying to, I don't know why I was trying to do math. Oh my gosh. Nope, I can't. I hate doing math. Anyways, I don't even remember where I was going with that. I totally squirreled why I was going to do math. Oh, yeah. So, 20 some years in active addiction, right? I got to give myself 20 years of grace of healing. And my initial trauma happened when I was 10 years old. And back then, PTSD was down a diagnosis, or CPTSD. Those were irrelevant. They did not even exist then. So I, of course, was misdiagnosed, put through the ringer of pharmaceuticals. Those were traumatic times. So from 10, it wasn't just the trauma that happened at 10. It was the trauma that happened at 10, at 11, at 12, all the way up until I was 30, pretty much, right? So then you take those years, and I got to give myself grace too on that, whatever those years equal to. 22, maybe? I don't know. That's probably totally wrong. Oh my gosh. Math, don't put me on the spot with math. I freeze. It's like my insecurity for some reason. But anyways, so what this comes down to is we don't want to blame ourselves for how long it takes to recover. We don't want to blame our parts. We don't want to blame anything, even when we find out that we've created situations, even when we find out that we created trauma or that we had a part in our trauma being created. We don't want to instigate blame. We want to be aware. We want to understand these parts because these parts love us undeniably, unconditionally, and they also fear us. They're like our children, right? Like they look up to us and they will hide in exile, afraid of being rejected. And those are also our managers, our protectors, things like that, right? Like we touched on IFS 2 episodes ago, and it is a wonderful program, Internal Family Systems. I have the book. I can't think of who it is off the top of my head. I guess I'm gonna have to look on my Audible. Give me just a second. Oh my gosh. I know his name and I don't want to Richard C. Schwartz, PhD. The book that I have been reading on at this point is No Bad Parts. And my therapist recommended it, and I love my therapist. She is phenomenal. Anyways, so his work is phenomenal as well. And it really, really gave me insight to what my brain was doing, right? Like my brain started doing IFS before I found IFS. And it just gave me the language to understand that this is being unveiled now in our consciousness and in our society. And as psychotherapy and just the psychiatric field start to reduce stigmas around needing them, and people can break through that, I don't need therapy. Why would I need to go to therapy? Therapy's not bad. There's nothing wrong with me. We're going to be able to use these systems a lot more. And there's going to be more that are unveiled as well. So, yeah. So the point is to recognize the programming so you can start changing it. You can start speaking to your parts gently, right? And you're allowed to get mad at your parts. You're allowed to say, I am very angry. However, but you also have to be careful because the anger is another part of you, right? You have to so I guess I should reframe that. A specific part can go through different emotions on their own is what it is. And I really recommend the book, right? I'm not a medical professional at all, but sometimes it's hard to separate the parts. Because when you're trying to work with one part, all these other parts see that it's getting attention, and so it wants to come in, and you have to ask them to step back. So you have to one specific part can go through different emotions to process its way out of exile or out of its behavior that it's currently in, that you want to transmute in an alchemical way. But yes, we always want to deal with them gently, right? And I've had to use some sternness with some, but the reality of it is that a lot of mine believe that there's a lack of compassion because I blamed myself for my life for so long, and I introverted it, and I was definitely and I know that I'm not alone in saying this. Compassion is the biggest key, and I think it's something that we've lost in humanity, and that it has to start within ourselves. And so when you work with your parts, or when you start realizing that you have these parts, you can start to question where a thought comes from. And this is really kind of the whole goal of this episode, is to understand where your thought comes from, the part specifically, to understand that they are separate. And they can actually be and they're separated from you. That's why they're this part, right? It's not saying that it's not part of you at the same time, because it is, but it's a part that feels separate from you, that is trying to take charge and has a certain behavior or a certain pattern that is no longer serving you. And so you can hold space between stimulus and response. And with repetition, with practice, with presence, you rewire and reclaim this specific part's sovereignty, and therefore integrates it or releases it, whichever one, or sometimes both, right? I work with so many parts and they tell me what they want to transform into, right? I've had rage want to turn into peace, and then I send it right now Mercury and Mars are showing up. I'm working very heavily with them, I guess, on this aspect. But like all last year and the year before, I was sending my parts to Pluto. Like they wanted to go to Pluto to heal. And so like I do this visualization and I send them to Pluto and they take balloons up or whatever, however it goes, right? And it's just beautiful. And so, that's what I mean by I integrate, but I also release, right? They need to go heal too. They need to go and do what they need to do. That energy there's a form of that energy that needs to be released while being transmuted, because you can't have combustion or like water and fire, right? Like when you're refining something, that steam is releasing. So, but it's also integrating the new shape, right? So, yes. So you teach your mind in working with these parts in a gentle and compassionate manner that safety is not going to occur in force or control. It's in truth, and it's in your infinite truth, the infinity of who you are, your sovereignty as a child, a being of the ability to create, the divine creator, consciousness, child creator of consciousness. And I tap my desk sometimes because I talk with my hands, and so that's sometimes what you hear, and I apologize. I will get better at this as we go down the road. So now that we've explored the mental field and its voices, like not many voices, we didn't talk about all the different ones or anything like that. Maybe we'll do that in another episode, but right now I want to talk about like its closest counterpart, which is the counterpart to these parts, and that is the emotional body. While the mind often speaks in thoughts, the emotional body speaks in sensations, right? And we know that they're connected. So they're not just feelings like sad or angry. They are deeper, subtler textures of energy that ripple through your system, often without words. And these types of emotions, these types of thoughts linked to emotions is what creates dis-ease in the body. It's what creates diseases, dis-ease, discomfort, disorders, all of those things in the body. So many people try to think their way through life while bypassing how they feel, right? Like it's what we've been taught to do. Just shove it down, suck it up. Men don't cry, women just have to deal with it. But the truth is, your emotions are the echoes of every unmet need. And not just your own, but generational, ancestral, societal. Every unprocessed wound, every energetic truth that you haven't yet spoken or embodied, and that largely many others haven't had the courage to do the same. And these emotions are not the enemy. They are not dysfunction. They are messengers, right? Here's Hermes showing up for us again. And like your mental parts, your emotional parts, because yes, there are emotional parts too, also formed in response to life. Some formed when you weren't allowed to cry, some when you were punished for feeling angry, and some when you had to pretend everything was fine just to stay safe. And a lot of times, these parts that were formed in that kind of way can be ones that are exiled, ones that are very hard to draw out, because the emotional part and the mental part, right? Like you have multiple layers there that were shoved down, and you're pretty much always going to. I'm not going to say it's not impossible, because I believe in an infinite reality. So therefore it is possible to just have a surface thought that, could have been exiled and maybe doesn't attach to an emotion, or an emotion that maybe does. I don't know. That's a way rabbit hole that we don't want to go down right now. But when you begin to awaken, spiritually or otherwise, those buried emotional parts start to rise. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because your system finally trusts you enough to feel. So one of my rules of thumb I have apparently quite a few rules of thumb. That's an interesting saying coming up in this today. So anyways, one of my other rules of thumb, and that I learned along the way, is that you will have a very, very, very difficult time healing if you are still in the toxic relationship, if you are still in the traumatic circumstances, if you are still in the abusive job. Because you're going to remain in a state of survival mode. Now, it's not impossible to heal being in those situations. However, we all know that when you change your frequency, your environment changes. So it can start with you, right? Like it can absolutely start with you where you're in those situations and you're going to therapy and you're doing meditation and you're doing shadow work and you're listening to this podcast and you're doing spiritual work and, all of those things, and you're finding yourself. But then eventually you're going to find a better job. You're going to find a better relationship. You're going to find independence. You're going to find celibacy for a while. You're going to do all those different things. But the type of trauma that I was in was so extreme, and that, there was no way for me to heal while I was in it or while I was repeating any variance of the circumstances. I had to be completely separated to start it. And, it wasn't just drugs of changing my people, places, and things, because one of my addictions was the trauma and the abuse that I suffered. And, my behavior in it and what I was kind of contoured to become in survival and Stockholm syndrome. Because that is one of my past diagnoses, is that I was in a situation where I had to choose love or hate, and I had to choose to love my abuser to survive. There was no question about it. I remember my higher self coming to me and asking me after some of the circumstances and experiences, what are you going to do? Are you going to choose love or hate? And I just kind of scoffed, and it just was like, what do you think I'm going to choose? I'm going to choose love, because that's what I want. Because I had been so deprived of love at that point in my life that it was all that I was seeking. And so I was willing to give it to anybody. It didn't matter how they treated me, but thankfully it saved my life. And it allowed me to be where I am today. And it served its purpose. As hard as it is for my ego to digest that, and even my gut, like it still can make me really sick to my stomach to understand and embody that something so heinous served a higher purpose in my life. But it did. It was another alchemical component. And the more that I can accept that, the more that I become an alchemical master in my own life and in my own right and in my own ability to create my world and what is beautiful around me, and understand pain on a better, higher level. I feel like this episode has had a lot of little side kick notes, so I am happy about that, and I am not going to apologize for that, as my insecurities want me to right now. And so when those emotional parts start rising, they don't necessarily speak in logic, right? Like they don't say, hey, I'm rage over here, deteriorating your liver, or, anything like that. They don't care about your calendar, your goals, or how productive you were this week. They speak in their own language, in their own waves, in their own frequencies, just like your parts do. And sometimes they show up, right? Like that lump in the throat when you can't speak, or like how I just got that feeling in the bottom of my gut, right? Like it's hard for me because it's like, all right, here's a confession, right? Like I'm just going to get it out here, because speaking out your confession is one of the stages of alchemy. And no, it's not related to Christianity. That is Carl Jung's theory on his 4 stages of alchemy. Is the first one is confession. And like one of the reasons I got this sick feeling in my stomach is admitting to you guys that something so heinous could have served me for a higher purpose, right? Like, oh my God, how bad am I going to be judged if you ever actually heard what I went through for you to be like, holy shit, she accepted that? Holy shit, she was okay with that? Holy shit, no, it's I healed that. Like that's what it comes down to. I healed that. And maybe one day we'll put that out there. I know that it's out there somewhere because I put it out there a long time ago, but I think I took it down. I don't know. It's probably on my old YouTube channel. Anyways, to be able to turn something like sexual assault and Stockholm syndrome and any form of abuse into a higher vibratory way that it works for you and serves you on your path is alchemical mastery. It is freedom. And it's hard because it's not the norm. It's not what society wants to hear. It's not what, people around you want to hear. Many people want rapists and assaulters and pedophiles and predators to pay with their lives, with themselves being abused, that kind of stuff. And we're actually touching on next week's episode a little bit. So I don't want to go too far into that. But now I just kind of drew a blank. I don't want to go too far into it because that does touch on next week's episode, which is an episode on how healing is creation and destruction all in one. And I'm super excited for it. So what I want to get back to is these emotions, right? And I was confessing. That's what it was. I was confessing that I'm afraid of being judged by society for how I have turned my experiences around and had them serve me in a higher purpose, and how I have accepted that I created them in some shape or form, whether it was through karmic debt, whether it was through soul contract, whether it was through generational debt, or whether it was through my own unforeseen patterned behavior, because that is truly what led me to meet my abuser. And there are parts that I absolutely had to take responsibility for. And it was very, very difficult. Are we going to break that down right now? Is that really what we're going to do? We're going to break that down. So one of the circumstances was I was 18 and I wanted to leave my home life because it was extremely traumatizing, and I had just come home from a group home and definitely didn't want to be living at home anymore. And so I basically manipulated my way into moving in with my abuser, not knowing what was waiting for me 2 months down the road, right? I did that. I was running from one thing, thinking that another would be an escape, and it ended up being worse in all accounts of lower vibration, how society views it, all of those things. And I really had to understand, I manipulated this guy so I could get away, only to get trapped in a very detrimental situation for years, right? I'm not responsible necessarily for what he did to me. That's, maybe in our soul contract or whatever it is. It's still a little uncomfortable for me to admit what I've seen in my third eye and in the higher realms of, we had a soul contract. And we lived it. We fulfilled it. And that's the good thing about it, is that it was fulfilled and it's done and it's over with. And what is 10 years of my life when I've lived 10,000? That's what it comes down to. So, emotions coming up today, right? Oh my goodness. But the emotional body is not timeless, or is timeless. I'm sorry, it is timeless. That means that generational, ancestral, right? Multidimensional, right? It doesn't follow linear rules. You can be 38 years old and a 5-year-old version of you is still grieving something no one ever acknowledged. And so when that grief rises, it's not just today's pain. It's a culmination, a remembering, a release. And it's lived on for years. Think about it. 5 to 38, 33 years. Yes, I mathed. Woohoo! Didn't embarrass myself. I like to relieve seriousness with some comedy. So, like to say Matt Rife in the house, because I absolutely love him as a comedian. And I have definitely been binging some of his stuff lately. But yeah, he can definitely help somebody process some real detrimental shit in a wonderful way, because laughter really is the best medicine. And it's my understanding from a higher vantage point, which means my higher self gave it to me, is that if you can laugh about something that you think that you would never laugh about, you open up a portal a magnificent healing portal that completely cleanses your system. So it's really, really phenomenal to understand that and to, be able to utilize things like that. So what happens when that grief rises and you realize that it's not just today's pain, right? That it's really heavy because it's been going on for 33 years. It's a culmination. It's a remembering. And sometimes that release obviously is going to be a little bit harder than if you just released something that was 5 days ago. So what do most of us do when this occurs, right? Like we try to rationalize it, numb it. We shame ourselves for overreacting. We do the 4 F words. And when we do that, we push those emotional parts back down. We tell them, not now. And we invalidate them the same way the world did when they were created. And I will do a future episode on what I'm about to say next, which is also when you have a working relationship with your higher self, there are time periods that sometimes something comes up and you literally know that like it's just not the right time for it. And you can literally speak to that emotion and say, hey, let's do this a little bit later. And you have that ongoing working relationship with your inner system that it will come back later when it's a safer space and time, when you're not driving down the road in the middle of a thunderstorm, barely able to see at 70 miles an hour. And you just like don't dare to take any focus off of what you're trying to do at the moment to process that emotion. So the work here is, like I said, it's not to fix your parts. It's not to fix your emotions. It's to feel them. It's to invite them back in, to let them rise without assigning them a story, to witness them as energy moving through you, not as evidence that you're broken, because you're never broken. It's when you allow emotion to move fluidly. And it's hard to do that, right? Like when we're all boxed up, blocked up, tensed up over all the years of everything that we've got, it's really hard to allow emotions to move fluidly. Sometimes we're lucky if we get them to move, an inch or two, and that be thankful for it because that's progress. And so you're not just healing the current wave, you're liberating every past version of you who had to hold that feeling alone, right? Like bam, boom, multidimensional person. And here's where it ties back to the mental field. Your thoughts and your emotions are in a constant feedback loop. The thought says, I'm not safe. And the body tenses and the emotion says, I'm overwhelmed. And then maybe we eat or maybe we spend or maybe we use or drink. And then the mind spirals trying to find control. All of these different parts, your emotions, your parts, your being, everything starts acting out in different ways, right? Like we become fragmented in the self in those moments. But if we pause and bring presence to that loop, you'll unconsciously be able to heal it. Well, if we're bringing presence, then we're consciously doing it. I wrote this backwards than the way that I wanted to say it. I wrote it as if you don't pause and bring presence to that loop, you'll unconsciously reinforce the pain over and over again. And it's not because you want to suffer. It's because the parts inside you don't know any other way yet, which is why we bring the presence and the consciousness into it. And sometimes it takes a while, right? We have to knock down door after door after door, but it does work and it does happen. However, they don't yet know what it feels like to be witnessed, held, understood, or loved, or that there's even the capability of them being healed, right? Like they don't know your sovereignty, but they can learn. And when you meet a rising emotion with curiosity, instead of control, you open one of those doorways. You let that part know, I am here for you. I hear you and you matter. And that part, again, is a part of you. So you are saying that to yourself. And that is where, like, proof is in the pudding, right? Like we want to see others' actions. We want you to put your money where your mouth is, right? Like we want to see actions louder than words. No, yourself wants to see that. Yourself wants you to put your money where your mouth is. Yourself wants you to see the actions in your words. And this is how you do it. This is how you do it. This is how you prove to yourself that you matter. And you collapse the time loop that kept you stuck in pain and programming and survival. And you restore coherence between your mind and your body, right? Like they're not going to fight each other anymore, right? And then eventually we're going to get that trifecta, that trinity, where your heart, your mind, and your gut all begin to agree. Because the truth is, there is no healing without feeling. There is no rewiring without releasing, right? Like, you gotta reveal it to heal it. And there is no wholeness without honoring every part of your emotional truth. So now that we've explored the mental and emotional parts as individual layers, let's bring them together. Because in reality, they don't operate in isolation, right? Like I said, infinite reality, probably do somewhere, but right now, where we are, no. If you're listening to this podcast, then no. They don't operate in isolation. Your mental voice and your emotional echo are in constant dialogue, whether you're conscious of it or not, right? And when that dialogue is unbalanced, when it's misunderstood or stuck in a trauma response, you end up reacting to life instead of responding from your truth, from your sovereignty. So let's break this down. Imagine you wake up and feel dread. No obvious reason, just a heaviness. That's the emotional body speaking first. Your mind notices the sensation and starts scanning. Why do I feel like this? Did I do something wrong? What's coming today? What if something bad happens? That's your mental part interpreting your emotional signal. And if that mental part is unhealed, it interprets the feeling through the lens of fear, past experience, or outdated beliefs. And this also kind of becomes a paradox with one of the really cool processing things that I'm going to tell you about towards the end of the episode. So we want to hold on to this, right? Like, because this is kind of how we end up in that loop, right? Like, our ego automatically starts to assess the situation and tries to label it as something, when really those heavy emotions are already attached to some buried part of you that's like starting to rise. And so you create a new emotion that potentially deepens, not because the danger is real, but because the thought added narrative to the sensation, right? Like, your ego is working to try to figure it out. And now you're in the loop. The emotion activates the thought. The ego amplifies the emotion into, whatever new thoughts that you're having. And this is how we unconsciously build entire realities that aren't rooted in truth, but in unhealed memory, because that original heaviness is already attached to a part. Could be exiled, could be buried, something that you don't see, but your ego is trying to label something that it sees. And so it's going to throw it wherever it can. So to know that it's a part inside of you, to calm your ego, we want to befriend our ego at the end of the day, right? Like I say, edging God out for early on, to understand that like you're edging your divine self out. But the reality of it is your ego is a part of you too. It is sovereign, it is divine, and it will work with you as you learn to understand your sovereignty and your divinity as well. But your ego is kind of like the major manager of all your parts. So when your parts start freaking out, your ego starts freaking out. And so, that's something like, it's like the over parts of the over parts kind of thing. So we talked about over parts in the last episode. If you didn't listen to it, go back and check it out. It's cool. So the unhealed memory is where we were. So then the opposite happens, right? Sometimes the mental part speaks first. Sometimes the opposite happens too, right? Like the mental part will speak first. And maybe it'll say, you're probably going to mess this up, dude. Like, don't do it. Or no one cares what you have to say. Or you should be further along by now. That's one that I always end up saying to myself, right? Like, that's what the whispers say to me. That's definitely one that resonates with me. Actually, all three of them. All right. Ironically enough. Channeled messages heard. Thank you. So, even if you were feeling grounded just moments before those thoughts, they trigger a wave of emotion, right? Shame, sadness, contraction, withdrawal. Now, again, these are parts of you. These are parts of you hiding somewhere that are like, they're trying to keep you safe. So you can see neither the mind nor the emotions are actually the problem. The issue is when they speak without being understood. When they speak without knowing their sovereignty or their ability to heal, or the fact that you care for them, right? Because we've neglected ourselves for a very long time through trauma, through all of these things, through running, through, whatever it is, the 4 F's. And when we let them run the show, instead of creating space between their signals and our responses, they kind of create these repetitive patterns of chaos. So we want to get into a space called awareness, right? We've been talking about it pretty much all episode. That's the whole point, is we want to be aware. We don't want to be vague. We don't want vagueness. We don't want to overlook or just kind of oversight. We want to know, I don't want to say details, because sometimes we don't need details. We just want awareness, right? Like details don't necessarily need. Awareness, yes. And it's what allows you to step into your sovereignty. And the reality of it is that when you have awareness, the details that you need will arise on their own to help guide you into further healing. So again, stepping into your sovereignty. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who witnesses them, holds them, translates them, and integrates them, right? They are parts of you. There is no doubt about it. It's a paradox. But at the same time, you're watching all of these things. You're watching, like when you get to this space, you get to watch them. You get to see them. And then you get to interact with them, right? Like kind of like creator consciousness does with us, we're doing with our internal landscaping. And so the key is learning how to pause between the thought and the feeling to ask, whose voice is that? Does that belief still serve me? What is this emotion asking me to notice? Or what part of me is activated right now? What part of me is triggered right now? When you begin to track the dialogue between your mental and emotional parts, you can start to identify which ones are still living in the past and which ones are ready to evolve. Because here's the deeper truth. When your mental field is aligned with clarity and your emotional body is allowed to move freely, they become partners in your transformation. The mind can name the insight. The emotion can carry the release. And together, they move you forward. But when either one is suppressed or misunderstood, you fragment. You abandon part of yourself in an attempt to stay functional, when what your soul really wants is integration. Integration means listening. It means slowing down, and our systems are not always used to that. I can tell you that now. It means being willing to sit with discomfort long enough to understand what it's really trying to teach you. Raise your hand if you voluntarily sit with your discomfort. Did you raise your hand? Because if you did, fucking phenomenal. Good for you. Like, you kick ass. And if you didn't, fucking phenomenal. You kick ass, but start doing it. Because if you are comfortable, you are not growing. And if you are uncomfortable, you are making leaps and bounds. It's not to say that, you can't. There's so many different ways to heal. There's so many different ways to learn. However, if you want that propulsion, that alchemical, that witnessing of magic in your life, get fucking uncomfortable. That's all I gotta say about that. So, integration means being willing to really get your hands dirty inside yourself. Not outside, right? Like, we're not worried about society. We're not worried about getting our hands dirty out there anymore. We're worried about us and what yourself is really trying to teach you about yourself and what it needs. And it also means knowing you are not failing just because you feel something painful, right? Pain and pleasure are the same receptor, same alchemical component. I'm going to drill that in everybody's head. I'm going to drill it in my own at the same time. Like, I know it, but man, I'm waiting to embody it. Like, I'm still working towards it because I still have the resistance to it. Like, how can that be? Right? Like, that sucks. No. Pain is not regression. It's a portal. It's an invitation to meet yourself with compassion instead of what society and generations prior to us have taught us. This is how you begin to restore your inner harmony. Not by silencing thoughts, not by suppressing emotions, by learning the language of both and choosing to respond with presence, not programming, right? Like, it's a trinity in itself. You, your thoughts, your emotions. You got the trifecta. There's no excuse not to heal. So now that we've uncovered the mental and emotional parts and how they interact, it's time to talk about what to do with this awareness. Because healing isn't just about knowing that you have these parts. It's about learning how to work with them, to create a relationship with them so they no longer run your life from the shadows. These parts don't need to be exiled or erased or buried or anything. They need to be witnessed. They need to be reparented with consciousness and compassion. So let's explore some practical spiritual and energetic tools that you can begin using today. We're going to do this today instead of an embodiment meditation. That meditation is going to come out Friday. Again, energy therapy on Monday. That's the schedule we're on right now. I might switch it to Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to kind of keep everything seamless together. But that means I got to get some episodes recorded ahead of time in a way that I am comfortable. So I'd love to hear back from you guys if that would be a better idea. If you guys like that, or if you're fine with where it is now. It could just be my ego being like, it's unconventional to release on Wednesday, then have a paired meditation come out Friday and a paired energy therapy come out Monday. Like, right? Why not just do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? And then do the readings on Saturday, because those are coming soon as well. So, but the readings might not be paired necessarily. Anyways, so we're going to explore some practical, spiritual, and energetic tools that you can begin using today. And some will call to you more than others. Have fun with them, play with them, choose one, choose two, choose 7, because there are 7, however many appeals to you. So number 1 is embodied check-ins, which you can start by pausing a few times a day and just asking, what am I thinking right now, right? Like you can literally set a little alarm on your Apple Watch or your phone or whatever it is. And at 10 and 2, you can just take a moment to be like, okay, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling in my body? And is this coming from truth or from programming? And then you can ask it what age or part of me this might be connected to. And this is also how you can learn to build trust to work with your parts later. Because I know a lot of people work 9 to 5s, right? So if you're stopping in the middle of the day of your workday and you can't really feel what this is wanting you to release, you can say, okay, I've gotten this far. We're going to revisit this tonight, set aside 30 minutes before I go to bed, and we're going to release these emotions. We're going to come back to this, right? And that's how you can kind of tell your higher self, hey, we're going to do this later, and follow up on it and it be true, and stop, and build a better level of trust with your inner workings and your higher self, instead of the, oh, I'll deal with it later, and then you never come back to it kind of thing. And so when you do this, you want to breathe into the answers. You want to notice without trying to fix. And you want to be the observer without needing to solve it right then and there. This helps you differentiate between your soul's guidance and your part's reactions. Excuse me. I had a small burp. I don't know if anybody heard it. So, number 2 is naming the parts without shame. You can absolutely give your parts names, not to pathologize them, but to create relationships. So like eating disorder, right? Like there's a really famous book, it's called Ed, Eating Disorder, right? So many people refer to their eating disorders as Ed. It has grown on me, so that is something that I did when I was recovering as well. And then like disordered eating, I don't remember what I called that one. I don't know. Anyways, so those types of things you can give names to, right? So we also have IFS that has given certain things names, like the protectors, the managers, the firefighters. Definitely worth familiarizing yourself with those. Voices that criticize, right? Like you might call the inner coach who was taught through toughness, right? Like, oh, there's my inner coach who was taught through toughness, right? Like, we want to be gentle today. Can we, and maybe there's a withdrawn part of you, right? You can name that one the little one who needed more love, right? The one that maybe interrupts people when they're talking for attention, right? Like in different settings, right? Like that's usually an inner child that wants attention and wants love. So naming them helps you respond instead of reacting. It gives your adult self the chance to take leadership of the internal system. And then you can say, I hear you, I see that you're scared, and I'm here now. We don't need to run anymore. And it also gives you the ability to understand what parts of you are responding in certain situations and where that's coming from, right? Like that inner child that's seeking love, that's coming from anxiety and from a feeling of unworthiness, right? Like you can absolutely then learn to pivot your response instead of reacting from that part. You can respond, and in your own mind, in the middle of wherever you are, you can say, we are loved right here just for standing here and being where we are. We don't have to interrupt the conversation or be an integral part of it. We can wait until this conversation passes, and then we will have our opportunity. So that simple practice is absolutely alchemical. Number 3, feeling the feelings without the story. One of the most liberating tools is learning to feel emotions without attaching a story. When we have those giant cries and we have no idea why, we don't want to know why. We want to let the grief move without needing to link it to a memory. We want to let the rage flow safely. Go to a rage room, hit a pillow, take a wiffle ball bat to a tree, shake your ass, do a cacao ceremony and dance ecstatically, scream in the middle of the woods, whatever you need to do, right? And make sure you don't judge yourself while you're doing it, or at least like contour. There you go. Two birds with one stone, right? Like you go out and do something new to eliminate and release this rage, and you're judging yourself the whole time, but you're also teaching yourself not to judge yourself because you're just letting it go. So that is emotion. Okay, so emotion being, motion, energy in motion, emotion, right? Energy, emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. And sometimes the mind wants to assign it a reason when all it wants is to move through. And if you have that doorway, don't close it on yourself. When you give space for emotions without mental interference, you liberate your nervous system from a trauma loop. So just allow it without questioning it. So number 4, write from the voice of the part or from the voice of the emotion, which usually turns out to be the part it's connected to. So grab a journal and invite the part to speak. You can just start to auto write. You can do prompts like, I am the one who panics when, or I don't trust people because, right? Like if you think you're the most trusting person in the world, I dare you to start with the sentence, I don't trust people because, and find out what your higher self has to unveil to you, right? Like whenever you think you're immune to something, guess again, try it out and see, because it's really fun. Like you'll learn so many new things about yourself and be like, holy shit. So, and another prompt is, I want to feel safe and I'm afraid that, right? This is a really, really good one for unveiling things that might be in exile or that are buried under the surface, because we all want to feel safe. And sometimes we don't know what's hindering our ability to move to the next stage of our enlightenment. But normally it's because we don't feel safe. And so what are we afraid of, right? We want to unveil that. So let them, write, let them speak through you, and then respond from your higher self. Give them the words they've never heard before, and this creates integration between the fragment and the whole. Number 5 is for change. We rewire through repetition, ritual, and response. Your brain and body have been trained to default to survival, right? Like that's what we talked about. Like we forgot who we are. So retraining them takes consistency, compassion, and intention. Create a ritual around your new way of being. When a mental loop starts, pause and say, this is an old program, I choose a new path, right? One of the things that I used to do for mental insanity loops, because they would be very, very overwhelming, especially coming out of addiction, eating disorders, Stockholm, PTSD, right? Like I had a lot of loops that would just consume me. They would literally feel like something outside of me was taking over and just like mutated into its own form of being. Like an entity had just kind of taken control over my mind, and then they just kept forcing me to look at these loops. And so what I was gifted from my higher self long ago, and that really, really worked for me, is I don't know about you guys, but I remember the How to Keep an Idiot Busy keychains from Spencer's back in the 90s, right? Like, so it says how to keep an idiot busy, turn it over to find out. And then at the other side, it says how to keep an idiot busy, turn it over to find out. And then, the concept is that they just keep turning it over. So I created a mental keychain that says, turn it over, right? And I can still see it. It's this nice leather strip of a keychain with the words turn it over. And then I would flip it in my mind. And I would see the words turn it over, flip it in my mind, turn it over, flip it in my mind. Because at that point in time, I was early on in recovery, and I was learning how to turn it over to a power greater than myself, which is really ultimately myself, but I was still figuring that out at the time. So turning it over to my higher self, turning it over to the creatrix, turning it over to God, to the divine, to consciousness, whatever it is, turn it over. And I would have to sit there and mentalize that keychain, sometimes for 20 minutes, but it works, I promise. So another one is when emotions rise, put your hand on your heart and whisper, thank you for showing me what's still alive in me. I'm here now. And then the third one for this one is when shame creeps in, ground yourself and say, this doesn't belong to me anymore. I forgive the part who carried it for so long. And these phrases, they seem really small, but they are powerful interruptions to decades of unconscious patterning. And over time, if you can commit to them, right, they're mantras. They become your new default setting. Like mine currently that I've been working on is I am the luckiest person that I know. And it feels so real, but yet every now and then, and especially if I don't do it for a couple of days, there will be parts of me that have relapsed on that belief. And there will be a large amount of doubt. And when I say I'm the luckiest person I know, I have parts at me literally like scoffing, like, bullshit. Like, what are you talking about, girl? You ain't the luckiest person you know. But I am. I am the luckiest person that I know. And I'm going to keep building on that because that magnetizes me. So number 6 is anchor into your infinity. Never forget that you are not here just to manage pain, just to process, endure, experience pain. You are here to transmute it. You are an alchemist. You are a sovereign, multidimensional being, a soul, a creatrix. And every part within you is waiting to remember that truth, right? Like waiting to remember that I contributed actively and consciously, made a conscious choice at 18 years old to move in with someone in a manipulative manner, right? That served me to understand that I was not a victim of my circumstances. I had full conscious choice. And while didn't necessarily like the choice, looking back, right? Like it served me. And I'm going to continue allowing the pains and the hardships to serve me. I'm going to find the ways that I created them for my highest gain, for the alchemist in me, to become and understand the philosopher's stone that I am. Every part within you is waiting to remember the truth, that truth, your truth. So speak to your parts like they are sacred, because they are. Even the ones that sabotage you, the ones that hurt you, even the ones that still don't trust you. Even the ones like that I manipulated with, right? That would be considered sabotage to me at one point in time. That would be considered hurting myself at one point in time. And I definitely lived for a very long time following, not trusting myself and how I made decisions, especially when I became conscious of how I made the decisions that I made, and that it was all from programming and all from survival and all from just trying to keep myself safe. I was just trying to keep myself safe from my home life. However, because I was of a certain frequency, I magnetized certain situations that repeated or even expanded, in a way, my experiences on a scale that, I wouldn't have egoically chosen to experience, but my soul did, and I have to honor my blueprint. So these parts, right? They've only known life inside of the illusion that's been created around us, the forgetting. And you, right now, are the bridge back to the real. This is how we liberate. Not by fighting the parts, not by spiritually bypassing them, by bringing them home with grace, with patience, with presence, because your healing is not a performance. It's a return to wholeness, to coherence, back to self. And number 7, which is track the thought, then follow the feeling, right? Here's a powerful practice that most people have never been taught. In the midst of thinking thoughts, find a thought and focus on it. Not the whole storm, just one. And ask, where is this thought located in my field? Right? So identify it. Is it coming from the left side of your mind? Like maybe right in the middle? Or is it coming from behind your ear? Is it coming from the right side? Is it coming outside of your head? Above it? Inside the skull? But not quite of you? You will be able to dissect more and more, how it feels. So you track it and you don't rush it. And then when you figure out where it's coming from, you're allowed to ask it, where does this thought lead in the body? And how it works for me is I can literally see that part drawing an etheric line down to the part of my body that it's attached to, right? So whenever I was actually typing this out and working with this and actually proofreading it because I work with ChatGPT on some of my scripts as well. Definitely work with ChatGPT. It's wonderful. So some of it I proofread. I kind of throw it all out there, and then it kind of organizes my thoughts for me a little bit. So anyways, I was proofreading it, and I didn't feel good about saying I wrote this part like that I didn't have ChatGPT help me. I don't know. I'm a very transparent being. So anyways, I watched this part from the side of my head create this etheric kind of loop around the side of my body and actually go down into where I believe my liver is. And so it can land in your chest, right? Tighten in your throat, stir in your liver, your stomach, your gut. It could be multiple parts. And this is what we call the energy map. Your mind is showing you what the body is still holding, how they're still interconnected, right? And your parts are trying to get your attention, to heal, to keep you safe, but also sometimes our parts are just that ODD, right? That oppositional defiance disorder where it's I'm going to do everything bad to get your attention. And I definitely have parts like that because I definitely had that behavior. And when you follow a thought to its origin, then trace it to its emotional impact, you create that bridge of awareness between the mental, emotional, and somatic layers of your being, right? Again, Trinity, mental, emotional, physical. That's where the true healing begins. This is exactly what we'll be working with in the guided meditation video and energy therapy session that follow this podcast episode. And together, we'll gently enter into those mental, emotional, and somatic access points and allow them to be seen, softened, and supported in healing. And after the sessions, you'll have the tools from this podcast episode to continue the work, to dialogue with these parts, to use the rituals and reframe in the way that we've discussed, and invite them forward with love and not force. And I do highly, highly recommend to at least choose one of these or more and do these before you listen to the meditation and energy therapy session, because I believe that you would get some more compounded healing out of it. Because healing isn't about removing the parts, it's about leading them home. And like I said, some of those homes they transform, like rage transforming into peace, also going to Pluto, right? And you are the one who can do that for you now, any point on your journey, but most importantly now. You've journeyed through some really powerful layers of your inner landscape to get you where you are to listen to this podcast. This is hopefully just another reclamation for you to climb your own pyramid, build your own pyramid, connect to your own higher self in a deeper and more alchemical way. And we want to do this not just to understand things, not just to know that we know these things, right? We want to reclaim them. We want to reclaim the mental voices. We want to reclaim the emotional echoes, the dialogue between them, and the tools to bring it all back into your hands, right? Like your hands, you are the creator. And if this feels like a lot, let me remind you, it's not meant to be mastered all at once. It's meant to be remembered, one breath, one part, one moment at a time. So right now you may feel really raw, open, tender, activated, maybe even triggered. That's not regression. That's release. That's what happens when truth touches places that have been waiting to be seen. It's a relief to be triggered. It's a relief to be activated in that way. Being triggered is an activation. Ooh, that's a really good episode. We're going to have to make one of those because it is. Walking through your triggers is a portal. It's a very difficult portal to walk through. However, it is phenomenal. And because I know this work goes deeper than words, I am always here for one-on-one by donation at this time. If that changes in the future, I will of course announce that. The hermeticallyspeaking.com website is still up. I am working on the A Spiritual World website currently, but there is a Square booking on there that I do one-on-ones to help people through their stages of healing. And like I said, I mean, there are suggested donations, but it is by donation basis because I do not deny anybody that is called to work with me the ability to work with me. And also is all about the energy exchange for me. It really, really is. I'm still healing a lot about money and things like that, but you know, my vessel is here being of service. And when I say I'm the luckiest person that I know, I really am, to be able to unveil mystic psychology on a hermetic level, right? Like my heart is full. So anyways, the meditation will be titled The Mind-Heart Merge, a guided meditation for reuniting thought and feeling, which is a practice that will help you gently bridge the space between your mental and emotional parts, allowing your system to soften, reconnect, and rest in coherence. And the energy therapy session will be titled Coherence from the Freeze, an energy session to reconnect the fragmented self. And it's designed to help you soften the loudness of the mental field, connect the dots between your thoughts and the emotions stored beneath them. Oh, my goodness, excuse me. And lead the fragmented parts of you back to coherence. This is not just healing, it's retrieval, a sacred return to the self who never stopped waiting for you. Yourself waiting for you. And you'll find these sessions released Friday and Monday. And next week, we will be exploring a truth that many shy away from, which is healing is both creation and destruction. We'll open the door to what it really means to let go of old identities, relationships, parts, timelines, what it means to be the aggressor and the victim, and how those roles ultimately swap in the healing journey. And we'll talk about how, again, nothing is as punishment, everything is sacred pruning, just like a forest clearing itself to allow new growth, your healing will ask you to destroy what was never yours, to compost what's expired, and to reclaim your power as both destroyer and creator. And we'll unfold how this duality lives within you, how destruction is not chaos, it's intelligence, and how creation is not always light, it's sometimes born through the shadow. So if you're standing in the fire of letting go, if you're standing in the fire of healing, next week is definitely for you. So until then, I thank you for doing this work. I thank you for choosing to look within, and I thank you for listening, truly listening, not just to this transmission, to the parts of you that have long awaited your voice. You are infinite, you are sovereign, and you are the one that you have been waiting for. Remember, you are the temple, you are the flame, you are the frequency. Let us find each other in harmony. If this episode spoke to your soul, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our new YouTube home at A Spiritual World. That's A Spiritual World. Your support not only fuels the Hermetically Speaking podcast, it also nurtures the growing library of meditations, energy therapies, readings, and transmissions I offer to help us all walk this healing path together. Your presence, your listening, your evolution. They ripple out farther than you may ever realize. Thank you for being here. Thank you for becoming who you truly are. Until next time, keep speaking the truth your soul remembers. Namaste and many blessings on your way.